You know all about the likes of Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone, two legends whose lives have turned to myth. But how about the person behind Casey Jones or other myths that were based on real people? That's what I'm talking about, the people behind the myth. And again, I got no doubt the first name you're thinking of is probably Johnny Appleseed. Yeah, that myth is based on John Chapman. And where the myth says he wandered the country barefoot, spreading goodwill and planting entire orchards, well, the man was a bit different. John Chapman was a shrewd businessman, and he planted orchards where settlers were likely to move. John also believed in his connection to nature, which is probably why he liked to walk around in bare feet. You know, grass just feels good to bare feet and to the soul. And in addition, Johnny Appleseed was also a pacifist and a vegetarian. Like I said, old John Appleseed was the first person you thought of. But how about Pecos Bill, Alfred Stormalong, or even Mike Fink? Hold these names tight, my friends, because they're all in the mix of people whose lives became legends. Now we all know the great cowboy Pecos Bill. You know, the old boy that roped and rode the western winds, along with inventing such things as roping calves and branding them. Well, old Pecos, he might not have been a real person, or even based on a real individual, but Pecos Bill was the American cowboy, and his larger-than-life exploits romanticized the Old West. You know, unlike Davy Crockett and Daniel Boone, who were real people and whose exploits have grown into myth and legend. And no, I ain't gonna spend a lot of time on old Davy Crockett. We all know he shot a bear as a young un and died at the Alamo. And there ain't an American alive who don't know who Davy Crockett was, and when it comes to Daniel Boone, well, the story is pretty much the same. So much so that way back when I was growing up, I thought they were one and the same person. And that was because of Fess Parker, who played both characters. And yeah, to a 6 or 7-year-old, that was pretty damn confusing. Now, while you've heard of both Daniel and Davy, I'm guessing if you're under the age of 50, you ain't never heard of Mike Fink, the legendary riverboat captain that traversed the Mississippi and Ohio rivers. Hard drinking with a love of whiskey and fighting, Mike Fink was the king of keelboats, and keelboats are how they traveled the long length of the mighty Mississippi and Ohio, back in the day when I was a young one. Legend has it that Mike Fink enjoyed wrestling grizzlies and alligators, that he could shoot a tin cup of whiskey off a man's head, and that he could outrun, out-hop, out-jump, throw down, drag out, and lick any man in the country. Yeah, Mike Fink lived a harsh, powerful, wild life, and he died the same way he lived. Drunk as a polecat, Mike Fink was playing his favorite game of shooting a tin cup of whiskey off a man's head, except he missed and killed the man. And the man he killed happened to have a friend in the vicinity, a friend who turned and shot Mike Fink dead. Rough and wild as old Mike Fink was, and he was as rough as they came, Casey Jones was rough as well, but also brave as can be as he rode his train to the promised land. Leastways, according to the Ballad of Casey Jones. And no, we're not talking mutant turtles, but we are talking engineers, as in train engineers. Imagine, if you will, you're a head engineer of a locomotive pulling a passenger train. And by the way, the name of your locomotive is a cannonball. You're speeding quickly down the tracks when you see another train ahead, stalled, sitting there on the tracks. And you know damn well there's a catastrophe coming your way. That's what happened with John Luther Jones, the engineer on the cannonball. And what John Luther Jones did next made him a legend. Solid, he stood, braking, slowing his train, blowing his whistle, allowing for his passengers to jump from their cars before colliding with the stalled train. The only death that day was John Luther Jones, who rose from the ashes as Casey Jones, the fabled folk hero. From Pecos Bill to Davy Crockett, our history, especially our history of the Old West, is littered with real and imaginary folk heroes. And sometimes, while the truth is interesting, the tale of the legend makes it more so. Sure is a lot of truth to people not being who you think they are or who you were taught who they are. This was just one of those videos I wanted to do, and it originated with Johnny Appleseed, because I remember hearing a while back that he was actually a kind of an interesting person, and so I did a little bit of research, and yeah, I know Pecos Bill, and I said it is not a real person. And yeah, Fess Parker, who was both Daniel Boone and Davy Crockett on the two Disney series, confused the heck out of me. I don't know how. I was like 5, 6, 7, I don't know. But interesting story. I met Fess Parker. He came to our school, to my classroom. I got to shake his hand, if I remember right. I remember at the time he had a good-looking woman with him. I didn't know who she was, but I think it was his wife. But I don't know why I remember that. That's just because I'm an old fucking pervert, I guess. I don't know, but I'm rambling on. That's all I'm doing. I'm just rambling on for your benefit. I've got absolutely nothing to talk about, because I'm certainly not going to turn into a myth or a legend of any sort. But the one thing is about me is what you see in front of you is kind of who I am, and yeah, I do drive my wife nuts, so okay. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. And yeah, I was serious. I'm just being an ass. See ya. I'm out of here. Love ya. Take care, my friends, and have a good day.